President Ibrahim Traoré walked onto the stage in full military dress. Yet it wasn't the medals on his chest that stirred the crowd. It was the words he carried. With steady eyes and a voice that rumbled like distant thunder, he lifted a golden banknote for all to see. "This," he declared, "is Afro-Money. This is the end of begging, the end of foreign control. Today, Africa reclaims her soul." The currency was unlike anything the world had known. Each note bore the faces of Nelson Mandela, Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, and Queen Nzinga. The coins shone with the image of a lion and a map of Africa, whole and free of colonial borders. Afro-money was not mere paper, it was the emblem of a reborn continent. The hall roared with applause, but the reaction across Africa was even more electric. In Dar es Salaam, Lagos, Accra, and Nairobi, people rushed into the streets, phones pressed to their ears, shouting, "He did it! He really did it!" In the Caribbean, young men wore T-shirts with Traoré's face alongside Marcus Garvey's. In Harlem and Atlanta, African Americans flooded social media, calling Afro-money the currency of the ancestors. But amid the celebration lurked unease. The French ambassador in Ouagadougou slipped out of the event early, his expression tense. CNN labeled the move a dangerous gamble, a reckless step away from economic stability. The U.S. Treasury swiftly issued a statement that it would be closely monitoring the situation. Traoré had anticipated this storm. In fact, he had been waiting for it. For months, his team had worked in absolute secrecy, crafting Afro-money as a hybrid physical and digital currency. Built on blockchain to block foreign interference, it was anchored by real African wealth: gold from Burkina Faso, cobalt from the Congo, oil from Nigeria. Within the first hour, more than 1 million people downloaded the Afro-money wallet app. Servers crashed twice. The hashtag #DocAfroMoney trended in 27 countries. From Jamaica, a young woman posted a tearful video. "My grandmother was beaten for speaking patois instead of English. She died poor. But today I feel like we are rich in dignity." 5 million people saw it in a single day. From the balcony of Unity Hall, Traoré looked down at the jubilant crowd. His hand gripped the railing. "I wish Sankara could see this," he murmured. In the square, youth waved flags and tossed fake euros into the air, chanting, "No more CFA, no more chains." He knew this was just the beginning. Afro-money was not just currency, it was a declaration of war on dependency, a battle against the invisible chains that had bound Africa for generations. But those chains would not break quietly. The idea had been born years earlier, in frustration and quiet defiance. Traoré once stood in a dim room with 4 economists, 2 officers, and 1 old man who had survived colonial prisons. On the wall hung maps, not of borders, but of trade flows: dollars in, gold out, euros in, oil out. "This is slavery with paperwork," the old man said, tapping the map. "They don't need chains anymore. They use banks." That line never left Traoré. Even as president, he knew independence would never come through speeches alone. The fight had to be economic. When he first announced plans to abandon the CFA franc, a currency still under the control of the French Treasury, advisors from abroad urged him to reconsider. IMF representatives arrived quietly, smiling, offering development packages and technical expertise. Some African leaders mocked him in private, calling him naive. One president told him, "You'll make noise today and be gone tomorrow. The system is too big." But Traoré wasn't interested in surviving the system. He meant to dismantle it. He gathered young African coders and financial minds in Ouagadougou, some from Western corporations, others from underground tech circles. They called their work Project Freedom. At the same time, farmers, miners, and traders in Burkina Faso were trained to use mobile wallets and blockchain cards. In one pilot town, an elderly woman bought fertilizer with Afro-money using only her fingerprint. She wept blinked as she held the receipt like a diploma. Threats soon followed. One lead developer, a quiet genius from Ghana named Kwame, narrowly escaped an attempted abduction. A black SUV tried to cut him off. He fled barefoot into the bush and hid for hours. No one claimed responsibility, but the message was clear. Traoré ordered the military to guard the project as if it were the nation itself. Developers traveled with armed escorts. Drones patrolled the servers. Meetings were moved underground. Even so, the harshest resistance came from within. A trusted minister resigned suddenly, warning that Afro-Money could make Burkina Faso a target like never before. He accused Traoré of courting war. The project could have faltered then, but instead it grew. Murals of Afro-Money bloomed across the capital. Schoolchildren learned to use the app. A viral video from rural Mali showed a woman shouting, "If this president falls, we all fall. If he stands, we all stand." Still, Traoré walked the palace corridors at night, thinking of those who had died for African freedom. Gaddafi, Sankara, Lumumba. He knew he was stepping into dangerous footsteps, but this time he believed the people were ready, not with weapons, but with unity. He whispered to the ancestors, "We are not slaves." Not anymore. The movement rippled far beyond Africa. In Baltimore, a woman named Alicia found her great-grandmother's birth certificate, Negro, born in Virginia, mother unknown. Through records and DNA testing, she learned her ancestors came from what is now Burkina Faso. Watching Traoré on YouTube, she wept. "I don't care what anybody says. That man is my president." Her video reached 12 million views in 3 days. From Trinidad to Toronto, young people stitched African maps onto their bags. Afro-Money was not legal tender in their countries, but it had become something else, a badge of pride, a symbol of return. In Barbados, Prime Minister Mia Mottley surprised the nation with a televised address. "We have waited too long to break the chains of foreign currency dependence. Afro-Money is not just Africa's project, it is ours as well. The Caribbean is ready to talk." But not all were celebrating. In Washington's State Department, quiet briefings turned into heated debates. If Afro-Money catches on, one analyst warned, the dollar could lose its grip over an entire continent. This isn't just politics, it's economic warfare. Soon after, the Afro-Money app vanished from Apple and Google stores in North America. Developers scrambled to release a mirror version. Social media exploded with hashtags like "Let Africa Trade" and "Digital Colonialism." In Ouagadougou, Traoré met an African-American delegation, including Jordan Blake, a tech millionaire from Oakland who had sold his startup and moved to Accra. He brought a check, $5 million in Bitcoin. "I've made money in Silicon Valley," Jordan said, voice trembling, "but I never felt truly wealthy until today. I want this to help Afro-Money grow. I want to be part of something bigger, something African." Traoré embraced him. "Our ancestors died nameless in foreign lands, but now their children return, not with chains, but with courage and fire in their hearts." Hope was surging until disaster struck. In Bobo Dioulasso, a warehouse storing Afro-Money notes was set ablaze at night. 3 men with foreign passports were caught. One carried a hidden badge in his boot. The letters were unmistakable: CIA. The leak shocked the continent. People asked, "Are they afraid of our money? Are they trying to burn our future?" Many felt confirmed in their belief that this fight was about more than currency. With Sankara's face, it was about freedom itself. "They can burn the paper," he said, "but they cannot burn the dream." The clip went global. Soon, from Ghanaian villages to Jamaican colleges, to black churches in Chicago, people printed Afro-Money images and hung them on walls, tucked them into books, taped them above doorways like protective talismans. The movement had taken root, and this time, there would be no turning back. Banks across West Africa received sudden pressure. Large financial platforms mysteriously began flagging transactions involving Afro-Money wallets as suspicious. PayPal accounts were frozen. Visa and MasterCard quietly pulled out of pilot partnerships in Burkina Faso. International news outlets began pushing a new narrative. "Is Afro-Money a scam?" asked one British headline. A well-known American economist went on live TV and warned, "If Africa abandons the dollar and euro, their economies will collapse. Traoré is playing with fire." But the most unexpected reaction came from Asia, and it stunned the world. North Korea's foreign ministry released a cryptic but clear message. "We support any nation that chooses sovereignty over submission. The Afro-Money project is proof that the world is waking up." The statement caused a global media storm. Western governments panicked. Their fear wasn't about North Korea, it was about what Afro-Money represented: a shift away from Western dominance. Not by weapons, but by vision. China remained silent. Too silent. Some believed they were watching closely, deciding whether to support, sabotage, or simply wait. In the meantime, the Caribbean made its move. In a surprise announcement, the prime ministers of St. Lucia, Grenada, and Antigua and Barbuda jointly declared they were forming a digital currency alliance with Burkina Faso to explore regional adoption of Afro-Money. The African Union did not endorse the move officially, but several presidents expressed strong interest. In Nigeria, something remarkable happened. A coalition of youth groups, fintech developers, and retired generals signed an open letter to President Bola Tinubu. It read, "Do not stand in the way of Afro-Money. The youth are watching. Africa is changing. Either lead or step aside." The letter went viral. Tinubu's government refused to comment. Back in Ouagadougou, pressure was building. Traoré's cabinet was split. Some advisors begged him to pause the Afro-Money project to ease international tensions. One diplomat warned him, "If we keep pushing, we could be isolated. You will be blamed if food and fuel shortages come." But Traoré didn't flinch. At a special press conference, he walked to the podium and paused. Cameras rolled. Silence fell. Then he spoke. "You fear isolation. I fear betrayal. You fear sanctions. I fear surrender. Afro-Money is not a coin. It is a message. We are no longer kneeling." The room erupted in applause, but outside the presidential walls, chaos was stirring. A document leaked online. It showed that Western intelligence agencies were tracking Afro-Money transactions and had identified key servers for cyber attacks. In the background, a mysterious campaign began targeting Traoré's allies. Fake news articles accused his ministers of corruption. A deepfake video circulated online, falsely showing him making anti-Christian remarks. But none of it stuck. People were no longer easily fooled. The more they attacked Afro-Money, the more popular it became. Then came the most jaw-dropping moment of all. On the stock market floor in New York, traders panicked when rumors spread that Ghana and Senegal were planning to leave the CFA franc next. The African Eurobond market plunged. Bitcoin surged. Afro-Money's value, pegged to a basket of African resources, rose by 12% in one day. In Paris, a senior financial analyst was overheard saying, "We thought it was just political. We didn't think it would touch the markets, but it had." The world was watching, and the tables were turning. The tension reached a boiling point. In the early hours of a humid night, Burkina Faso's central Afro-Money server farm in Ouagadougou experienced a coordinated cyber attack. The firewalls held at first, but then something strange happened. The attackers bypassed an internal layer, using encrypted backdoors to high-level international defense systems. Traoré was awakened by a secure call from his cybersecurity chief. "Mr. President, this attack is not from freelancers. This is military grade, possibly state-sponsored." He didn't speak for a moment. Then calmly, he ordered the military to move. Within 30 minutes, all Afro-Money data centers across the country were secured by special forces. Internet access was cut in certain government zones. The attack had failed, barely, but the message was clear. This was no longer just economic resistance. This was war in the shadows. That same day, a secret meeting took place inside a luxury hotel in Côte d'Ivoire. Several West African officials, 3 foreign ambassadors, and 2 representatives from global financial institutions were present. A hidden recording of the meeting would later be leaked. In it, one man with a European accent said, "Traoré must be stopped. If we cannot stop Afro-Money, we will lose West Africa." Another voice, African, replied, "We'll create panic, cut trade routes, blame him for every shortage, let his own people turn on him." The video hit social media like a bomb. Millions watched. The hashtags, "Expose the Plot" and "Gasham Stand with Traoré" exploded. But the damage was already beginning across Burkina Faso. Shelves began to empty. Oil tankers were blocked at borders. International suppliers suddenly lost contact. The prices of basic goods doubled. Rumors of famine spread like wildfire. People grew anxious, angry. In the capital, a group of paid protesters held signs that read, "Stop Afro-Money. Feed the people." But sharp-eyed citizens noticed something strange. The signs were written in flawless English, and the same faces appeared at protests in different cities. Within hours, young Afro-Money supporters flooded the streets to defend the revolution. They chanted, "We'd rather be hungry and free than fed and enslaved." Old women cooked meals for the youth. Local farmers distributed food at half price. Even in the hardest neighborhoods, people shared what little they had. One emotional video showed a blind griot playing a kora while children danced with Afro-Money notes pinned to their clothes. He sang, "They want our land. They want our gold. But they fear our mind, and that is why they fear our money." The song went viral. Radio stations across the continent played it on repeat. But then, the twist. One of Traoré's most trusted security aides, a man known only as Captain L, disappeared. Hours later, he was found crossing the border into Togo with a flash drive containing Afro-Money's reserve blueprint. He had been bribed with $5 million. When questioned, he broke down in tears. "I believed in Traoré," he sobbed. "But they showed me what they would do to my family. I didn't know what else to do." Traoré didn't jail him. Instead, he brought the man before a public council flanked by elders and youth leaders. In a live broadcast, he said, "Colonialism doesn't always look like a foreign flag. Sometimes it wears our skin and speaks our language. But forgiveness is also our weapon." He turned to the captain. "If you truly regret, then help us build what you almost helped destroy." The crowd was silent. Then, one by one, they stood and clapped. That moment, that choice to forgive, was more powerful than any speech. It showed the world that this movement was not about revenge. It was about transformation. And the enemies of Afro-Money saw something they hadn't expected. Unity that couldn't be bought or broken. Not by money, not by fear, not even by hunger. The sun rose over Ouagadougou on the day that history refused to forget. A new Afro-Money note had just been printed, this one featuring Queen Nzinga and Marcus Garvey, side by side. The colors were rich, bold, and powerful, like the soil of Africa itself. On the back, the words were clear and defiant. "Africa is not poor, she is robbed." That morning, thousands gathered outside the African Unity Hall. Not for a rally, not for a protest, but for a celebration. They came barefoot and dressed in traditional robes, business suits, and Afrobeat t-shirts. Children waved tiny flags that read, "One Africa, one money," and then President Ibrahim Traoré stepped forward. This time he wore no uniform. He wore a plain white tunic, a necklace of cowrie shells, and sandals made from Burkina leather. His eyes were tired, but his spirit was unshaken. He raised the new note to the crowd and spoke with fire. They have tried to crush this movement. They sent hackers, agents, lies, and fear. But what they could not stop was love. Love for our freedom, love for our ancestors, love for our future. He paused, letting the words sink deep into the hearts of those watching, not just in Africa, but across the globe. Today, Afro-Money becomes legal tender in 7 nations. By the end of this year, it will be in 20. We are building an economy based on value, not violence, on unity, not exploitation. The crowd erupted. But the emotion wasn't just in the volume, it was in the tears. Grandmothers wept, farmers stood in silent pride. Across borders, screens lit up with cheers from Barbados, Brazil, Trinidad, and Brooklyn. Then came the moment no one expected. A young African-American woman walked onto the stage. Her name was Zuri. She had flown from Chicago with just 2 suitcases, a returned DNA report, and a dream. She held the mic with trembling hands. My great-grandfather was sold on the coast of Ghana. I was raised thinking I had no home. But Afro-Money, this is more than currency. It's my welcome back. It's my healing. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of Afro-Money. This is the first time I've ever held money that feels like it's mine. Traoré hugged her. Cameras flashed. The image of a Burkina soldier president embracing a descendant of the diaspora went viral across the world. At that very moment, something happened that no global analyst had predicted. The Afro-Money app shot to the #1 download spot in over 20 countries. People in Brazil, the UK, Canada, and even France bypassed restrictions using VPNs, desperate to be part of what they now called the Black Renaissance. A wave of Afropreneurs, young business minds from across Africa and the diaspora, began listing goods in Afro-Money only. Designers, musicians, farmers, coders. The New York Times ran the headline, "Can the West stop Afro-Money? Too late." In the United Nations, a diplomat from a small Caribbean country stood and said, "Let the world be warned. A new economy is being born. Not from Wall Street, not from Brussels, from Ouagadougou." Of course, the threats didn't stop. There were still efforts to block trade, to sow doubt, to break supply lines. But the chain had snapped. A new rhythm had begun. In schools across Africa, students now learned about Afro-Money not as an idea, but as their future. In markets, elders taught each other how to scan QR codes with proud smiles. And across the ocean, in places where African blood had once been bought and sold, people began to dream again, not of escape, but of return. Traoré, standing on the AI balcony that night, watched the lights of the city flicker below. He held the final printed Afro-Money note of the day, the largest denomination, worth the equivalent of $100. On it was the face of Thomas Sankara, his mentor, smiling. "I told them we were no longer kneeling," he whispered to the night. "Now we rise." And rise they did. With one passport, one voice, and one money. Afro-Money, the currency of freedom, the heartbeat of a continent reborn.